Good morning. I'm Joshua Freitas, and I will be speaking to you about nurse staffing and retention for my leadership and management class with Dr. Teresa Dyer Kramer, who is the professor. So, our problem is that nurses are very understaffed across the nation. We, in fact, bring in other nurses from other countries, and sometimes it's not even that the nurses are understaffed in the region. It's just that the hospitals are trying to cut costs, which can lead to bad patient outcomes and retraining costs for the hospitals. So what we see is that we have about 6% risk of death for patients when a shift with a nurse staffing shortage of just 8 hours occurred. So basically that just means that, of course, with low staffing, say you have less nurses than usual and we have some critical patients and they start to go down and we don't have the nursing staff to take care of them, or as simple as the nurses are exhausted from having too many patients. It's shown that a 4-to-1 ratio is most optimal for the outcomes of the patients. And what we see in hospitals is in med-surg floors you get a 6-to-1, 7-to-1 ratio, which burns out the patients and the nurses as well. Of course, this is not good for the hospitals, it's not good for the nurses, and this is why we end up having nurse staffing issues and shortages. What happens when you have an unhappy nurse who's not staffed correctly is they end up cutting corners, and these cutting corners, it leads to bad expectations, bad outcomes, and you're not able to meet the expectations of things like the hospitals, the patients, family members, and even fellow staff. So, when you have staff that are unhappy with each other, they end up turning on each other, and that's not good. It turns out to be a danger for all patient, family members, hospital, and staff as well. When you're cutting corners to try to speed up to meet that goal that you still have even though you're understaffed. Retention is another big topic here. The problem is that nurses leave their jobs because they're unhappy, they're dissatisfied with staffing ratios. Say they're cutting out nursing assistants, or they're cutting down on nurses, and they're just trying to save a buck. But what we find out is that it costs about $80,000 to retrain a specialty nurse, and I mean that's a lot of money. And then have that nurse leave within a year or 6 months, and then have to retrain, when actually they would save, it shows, about $140,000 every year if the nurse-patient ratios were just 4-to-1, in that way that it would make the nurse happy to stay and continue their work, provide a good work ethic, because unhappy nurses are going to have a bad work ethic and possibly leave sooner. Also, we have patient dissatisfaction, which is not good. If patients are unsatisfied, they're not going to be returning to the facility. This is going to lower the patient satisfaction scores. It creates an unhappy environment for patient, family, and staff. Have you ever been in a room with patient family who's unhappy with what you're doing, even though as a nurse you're running around and you're trying to help them, and you just can't please them because you just aren't able to be at every room at once, and you get those unhappy family members as well as staff members that are mad at you, like your CNAs, who say you're not helping them because you're in other rooms helping the patients because you don't have enough time or staff to complete the goals and tasks that are required of you. Talking about staff satisfaction, this is going to go back to retention. Obviously, if you're unhappy, like we talked about earlier, you're not going to stay at the place. You're going to be thinking about leaving. You're going to be thinking about switching floors, and that's unfortunate because the managers want to provide an atmosphere that makes their staff happy, but may be pressured to understaff the floor to save costs for the hospital. This can cause bad work ethic for the nurses. They're just resentful that they're having to come in and work in these understaffed conditions, and it can actually cause staff to turn on each other, like I was mentioning earlier about how if you have not enough CNAs or you don't have enough nurses, then the blame starts being passed around of why is the work not being done. The managers look down and say, hey, what's this? Why is this not being done? And the blame just circulates, and really the blame is on staffing issues, not the staff on the floor, because you can only do so much with what you have. We have some satisfaction questions here. So if you're thinking of asking yourself these questions or asking somebody else, what do you think the answers would be? So we have, has the number of patients you have been assigned resulted in job dissatisfaction? In my current job, that's not a problem, but I know I've got a 4-to-1 staff ratio on a progressive care unit. I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed for the most part. It can get overwhelming, but that's just nursing for you. I know that some of the other floors that are 6-to-1, 5-to-1 do feel like they're overwhelmed and understaffed, and I can be understaffed as well. But in that question, it doesn't apply to me so much. Have you thought about leaving your current nursing position in the last 6 months due to job dissatisfaction? Well, yeah, I have, due to recent turn of events where we lost a CNA for, we had 3, now we went down to 2. This is a 24-bed unit, and started to transfer the CNA responsibilities onto the nurse, which, nurses can do anything below them, but when you already have all your things you have to do through the day, and you just added on what the CNA is supposed to be helping you with, now they don't think they have to because there's a less number of them, and they've been told they don't have to. That causes problems on the unit. So 2 CNAs passing off duties onto the nurses. So the CNA's upset because they have 12 patients, and where's the blame go? It circulates around the unit. Has the current economic downturn influenced your decision to stay in your current position? I don't think so. I think nursing is a pretty good career to, if you're unhappy with your current job, you can always leave and go find another job, but that comes down to retention. That's not good for retention. That's the mindset. Hey, look, if I'm not happy here, then I can go somewhere else. Maybe they'll treat me better, and maybe they'll staff us correctly. And that's kind of, I don't think the economy works in nursing as much in that situation, but that's definitely something that's going to hurt retention. So to fix all these problems, I believe that we're going to be looking at transformational leadership. This is going to be staff working together to transform the current policies and procedures and staffing issues to try to make the patients and staff happy. This is going to be looking into things and kind of just overhauling. It's a type of leadership to overhaul everything and just kind of look and not just stick with policies because they're there. It's to look at maybe staffing and retention problems, or the outlooks of the nurses and patient satisfaction and patient to staff ratio, and it's to fix these problems together instead of just having like a dictatorship where they say this is what it is and this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's always been. It's a good way to refresh and kind of get some new eyes in there to see what we can fix. And that's about it. Here's my references. And staffing and nursing units is always going to be a problem unless we can get some new change here, maybe with that transformational leadership. Thank you for watching. My name is Joshua Freitas, and I appreciate you watching my presentation.